Hey guys, how are we? Welcome to the preview. TSZYU, Dylan BIGGS for the Australian Super Welterweight title. It all goes down tomorrow night, November 22nd, 2023 at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre. It is, of course, brought to you by No Limit Promotions. It'll be shown on Main Event and KO. So if you haven't got it yet, make sure you buy it. It's $59.95. I know we've been over this a little bit on some of the previous shows that the cost of it and whether it's worth it or not. Look, $60. I personally think, in the scheme of things, it is worth the $60. But that's all besides the story, which will go down tomorrow night when NIKITA, Dylan BIGGS battle it out in the center ring, which I think will be a unbelievable fight and a very exciting fight. Before we get into it, get into the whole card, that is, let's go through the undercard of the event. So we're going to start off with Brent Walton, 1-0. He'll fight Darren Gara Truhella, making his debut. That's at welterweight over 4 rounds. We've got Jason Fawcett, 6-1, fighting Jordan Martin, 2-1 over 5 rounds at super welterweight. We've got Amber Amelia, who's 3-2. She's going to be fighting Natasha Cureen, who's 2-1 over 6 rounds at super bantamweight. Mark Schliebs, 12-2, will take on Shamal Ramanouj, I think that's how you pronounce it, who's 10-4. That's over 6 rounds at super bantamweight. What else have we got there? Liam Taliva, 5-0, will fight Brandon Garush, 1-0 over 6 rounds at heavyweight. Monia Fathi, I think that's how you pronounce it, 6-0, will fight Joel Pavlidis, 4-2-1. And then, of course, we'll get into the 2 main fights after that. But look, out of the whole card, look, I'll be honest with you, I don't know a hell of a lot about a few of the guys and girls on the undercard. Amber Amelia, we've seen a few times on pay-per-views and everything else. So I think her fight, she's never in a bad fight, by the way. Of course, her last fight with Chanel Dargan was an absolute war, so I'm assuming this will be no different. The opponent, Natasha Cureen, I think she's about a foot taller. That's a hell of a lot of height difference in this fight, so I'll be interested to see how that looks on TV. Mark Schliebs, look, I think this kid is very, well, I don't call him a kid, he's a man, of course, but I think he's a very, very talented guy. He's fought out of his weight division a few times. He's coming up against Shamal Ramanouj, as I said, 10-4. Look, Mark Schliebs is a very, very talented guy. I'd be interested to see how he goes in this fight in what is his natural weight division. Of course, he's come up against Brock Jarvis, who was an absolute monster at that weight. And his last one against Rocky Ogden, again, who was a big guy in comparison to Mark Schliebs. So I'll be interested to see how he goes. I'm not quite sure Shamal Ramanouj is, let's just say, a top shelf type of opponent. But let's just see what Mark Schliebs has got. Let's hope he can get on the winners list. As I said, he's a very, very talented guy, and let's see what he's got once he gets past his fight. Once they start to match him up with someone probably a little bit more up the ladder as far as ability goes, you get some bigger fights down the track. I'm not quite sure the heavyweights, I must say. Monia Fathi, I did see him. They've got big raps on him. He'll be, this will be a tough opponent for him, Joel Pavlidis, so he can fight. Pavlidis, of course, has fought Dylan BIGGS in the past. So, look, that'll be interesting. I'll be interested to see how Monia Fathi goes against a durable opponent in Joel Pavlidis. Certainly has shown a little bit in his last previous fights, but let's see what he has then. Into the 2 main fights, and let's start with the co-main event for starters. Isaac Harmon, 14-2. He's going to come up against Troy Coleman from the UK. Now, the weights of these 2 guys, I've got it here somewhere. All right, so Isaac Harmon, 72.26 kilos, which is 159 pounds on the dot. Troy Coleman weighed 72.38 kilos, which is 159.2. Look, as expected, the 2 guys got on each other's face. Isaac Harmon doesn't know any other way, and that's why he's such a popular fighter here in Australia and hopefully overseas eventually. Look, I think Troy Coleman more than held his own. I think he looked the specimen as well. I thought that Isaac Harmon, who's a big middleweight, I thought he would look a lot bigger than Troy Coleman, but Coleman surprised me with the size comparison. And I think he'll give Isaac Harmon a good fight. Look, I think Isaac Harmon will get the win. I've only seen bits and pieces, I will say, Troy Coleman on YouTube, and he's capable. Is he that elite world-class fighter? No, he's not yet, but that's okay, because Isaac Harmon's probably not quite there yet either, and I think this is a really good stepping stone for him if he's going to test himself in deeper waters again. Of course, Michael Zarafa put an end to maybe a temporary halt or a giveaway sign, whatever you want to call it, last year when he knocked Isaac out in 2 rounds. Isaac, to his credit, wants to make amends for that fight, and good luck to him. And I think Troy Coleman is the perfect opponent for him. Not a big puncher, okay skills. I think he's custom made for Isaac Hardman's style. And I would expect Isaac Hardman to hunt Troy Coleman down. I think stop him in 7, 8, 9 rounds, around that mark. So it's for the WBO Intercontinental Middleweight title. So a belt on the line, or whoever wins this fight, if they do win this fight, will get a top 15 ranking, you would think, after this. Isaac's been there before. I'm not sure Troy Coleman has, but Isaac has before he fought Zarafa. So, yeah, look, big stage for Isaac Hardman. He's coming off a good win over the Japanese fighter. Before that was obviously Rowan Murdoch. So a big opportunity for him to get back on the winners list. And I expect him to do it, as I said, in probably 7, 8, 9 rounds, something like that. I think Troy Coleman will show a little bit early. I just don't think he's going to be strong enough to keep Isaac Hardman off. So let's get into the main event. So as usual, there's always some shenanigans. We saw it before the weigh-in today. Dylan Biggs' trainer, Brendan Smith, he wanted 2 sets of scales. He was concerned with the calibration of the official scales. Look, I don't know. I'm sure Brendan's got maybe every reason to do it. I'm not quite sure why, though, why he would do it. But I'm sure he's got his reasons. But I was just surprised that, hey, look, the combat board, and I would have expected maybe the combat board to step in and say, Brendan, step off. This is what we get paid to do. This is our job. These are the official scales, so like it or lump it, and please get off the scale and get off the stage and get your fighter ready. That's what I would have thought in this instance. There comes a time, I know the camps are able to dictate a lot, and they can complain or object to officials or whatever it might be, to either the combat board or the promoters or whatever. But I think in this case there, when you're 5 minutes before the weigh-in, I would have expected the combat board to say to Brendan Smith, enough, get off the stage. These are the official scales, and that is it. You both got to weigh in on them. They've both been, or the scales are being calibrated. If you want to test your scales against the official ones, that's fine. We can deal with it. But to get on stage, and Brendan's a lovely guy, don't get me wrong. I'm not sure whether this was a little bit of grandstanding or he was genuinely concerned. NIKITA TSZYU, to his credit, he didn't know anything about it. He didn't want to know anything about it. He was quizzed afterwards in the interview with the commentators on the main event. He didn't know, didn't care, just wanted to get on with it, and was quite surprised that there was the kerfuffle about this. Of course, we've had the walkout drama. NIKITA TSZYU did say today that he was quite prepared to walk out second if need be, or if required. It was up to the promoters. I still think he will 100% walk out second, make no mistake about that. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I just think no limit. NIKITA TSZYU is their guy, and I think they're going to stand by him and make him walk out second. So, look, I thought both guys handled themselves really well at the weigh-in. You could tell that the build-up to this fight was just starting to grind a little bit on both guys, especially NIKITA. I thought for the first time, NIKITA looked a little bit ruffled. I know he's probably done weight hard. I totally get that. But for the first time today, I thought that Dylan Biggs, in the lead up to this event with the press conferences and the interviews, almost looked a little bit uneasy. Remember, this guy is 21 years of age, so you've got to give him a little bit of grace there. But I think today I was really surprised, pleasantly surprised, I will say, by how composed that Dylan Biggs seemed. He made the weight what looked to be pretty easy, and just on those weights, NIKITA TSZYU 69.6. So 153.1. Dylan Biggs 69.46, which was 152.8. So both guys coming well under the 154-pound limit. So yeah, so that was good for both. But as I said, Dylan Biggs, I thought, looked more comfortable. Looked like he made the weight a little bit easier just by the look of the colour of both guys' face and the jaw structure and the eyes, everything. You always tell the eyes are popping out. I just thought NIKITA looked like, and I think he even admitted as such after the fight, that the last sort of little bit was pretty tough. But look, I think NIKITA seems to be one of those guys that once he's hydrated and had something to eat, you'll probably see him pump up like Superman. He'll probably get in maybe 6 or 7 kilos heavier than he was today. Dylan Biggs, I think, will probably put on 4 or 5. But as I said, I just think Dylan, I thought, was a little bit more composed than NIKITA, which was surprising to me. Look, that means nothing tomorrow night, by the way, because, you know, with the aggravation of making weight, you've got all the cameras on you, you're sick of the training, you're sick of everyone's camera in your face, you're sick of being asked the same questions, you're sick of, watching your diet all the time. So I just think Nikita, more than being flustered by Dylan Biggs, I think he was more flustered by enough. I just want to get in there and lock horns. And that obviously will happen tomorrow night. So on to the fight itself. Look, I think this has got war written all over it. I think both guys very different in a lot of ways, but very similar in a lot of ways. And the reason, or the way they are very similar, is that both like to throw bombs, but also both are very vulnerable to being caught either in motion, in the motion of punching, or after they finish punching, they're vulnerable to the counters. So I think Nikita TSZYU, talent-wise, I think he's naturally more talented than Dylan Biggs. He's obviously had a lot more fights in his career. He's had 3 less pro fights, but had a lot of amateur fights. Dylan Biggs sort of fresh out of the amateurs at 21. So, look, I think Dylan Biggs is going to start very, very quickly. I think he's a fast starter. We saw that in his last fight against Ryan Mitchum, and I think he's going to want to get out there and get in Nikita's face early. I think Nikita will probably come out with maybe the intentions to maybe box and have a look at Dylan Biggs, but I've got no doubt that if Dylan Biggs comes out and lands a couple, you're going to see Nikita TSZYU dig in and try and go with Dylan Biggs. And that's where I think Nikita can be vulnerable. We've seen it against Jack Brubaker. We've seen it against Ben Horn, where he does tend to forget that the other guy can punch back. So he will punch, and then, as I said before, he's susceptible to that counter or even mid-punch. And we saw that Jack Brubaker did it, and it was just by throwing that right hand down the middle, because Nikita doesn't tend to go outside those shoulders when he punches. He tends to punch, even with the uppercuts and hooks, he tends to punch straight down the middle, and that leaves him vulnerable to those long-range straight punches down the middle. And that's where I think Dylan Biggs can catch Nikita. We saw it again in his last fight against Ryan Mitchum. By no means am I comparing Ryan Mitchum to Nikita TSZYU, by the way, but I just think he's a very slick puncher. He is pretty quick, actually, Dylan Biggs, especially early. So it's going to be very intriguing early in those first couple of rounds. I just expect almost in the first round that you might see some real fireworks. As I said before, I think Dylan Biggs comes out fast. Nikita TSZYU begins to box, gets sucked in, and then we might even have a free-for-all for the first 3 minutes of the fight. So I'm really looking forward to that. Then it comes down to who settles after that. Now, I think if both fighters get through that first round, because I think if they do go out there and start throwing bombs, it's whoever's going to land first. I hope it doesn't end in the first round, by the way, but that's what I can sort of see happening. So I've got a feeling that we will get past that first round. They'll both land some bombs. The crowd will be up in arms, which would be great. And then I think you'll see the fight settle. And that's where the test comes into a Dylan Biggs, who hasn't fought anyone remotely resembling the talent of Nikita TSZYU. Probably his only real credible opponent, if you ask me, is Dan Hill. I think a lot of the opponents before that, well, let's just say not up to the standard, or nowhere near Nikita TSZYU, put it that way. Dan Hill has got potential, but only had 4 fights when they fought earlier in the year. So that's probably the only question mark I have with Dylan Biggs. He's looked pretty good against the lesser lights. How is he going to go against a super talent like Nikita TSZYU? But on the other hand, with Nikita, now he's had some okay names. Benjamin Bomber was talked up a lot, didn't show a lot. We had who was it, Ben Horn, who was probably going to be one of the ones who we expected a blowout, and actually gave Nikita his hardest fight yet. So, and look, he's had a few journeymen thrown in there as well, but overall, I think Nikita's caliber opponents is a lot better than what Dylan Biggs is. Well, I'm actually 100% positive that it's a lot better caliber than Dylan Biggs. That doesn't mean a hell of a lot when both guys get in there and start swapping punches, by the way, but I just think there's a big question mark over how Dylan Biggs is going to react against that elite fighter like Nikita TSZYU. And if they do start getting into a bomb throwing contest, is Nikita TSZYU going to show some holes that we haven't previously seen in Dylan Biggs' makeup against those lesser lights? Because as good as Dylan Biggs has looked along the way, I just can't get a definitive opinion of him, because I just haven't seen him in a really high level type of fight. And as I said before, Dan Hill's probably the only one, but it only had 4 fights. Whereas Nikita TSZYU, I think he's got a really good portfolio to sort of judge him on. Now, he's nowhere near fought anyone at world level yet either, Nikita. This is his biggest fight to date so far as well. But I think as the fight goes on, I think you'll see the class of Nikita TSZYU start to rise. And this is, I will say, the very conditional on the fact that maybe apart from that first round where we might see a few bombs thrown, that after that first or second round, he settles and gets back to being what makes NIKITA an excellent fighter, and that is using his range, using his speed, using his timing, using his power, using his angles. That's where I think he's going to get Dylan Biggs. And I know I think his corner will be telling him to fight that way. Use his long range, let Dylan Biggs come to him, because even though Dylan Biggs is a lot taller, you can see him behind me there. Apologies for not being able to see the faces there, but you can see the height difference there. But I think that it will be Dylan Biggs coming forward and pressing the fight. I think NIKITA will be on the back foot. Not, when I say on the back foot, not running, but just letting Dylan Biggs come to him, drawing him in, and then hitting him with those big uppercuts and hooks from a distance, I think, and that big left hand. So I think if NIKITA sticks to that game plan, I think as the fight goes on, he'll start to bust Dylan Biggs up. I'm not sure Dylan Biggs can go at 10 rounds at a really fast pace. I know the Dan Hill fight, he did that, but again, NIKITA is a whole different kettle of fish. So I see, as the fight goes on, I see Dylan Biggs continuing to press. He'll be game. He'll continue to come. He'll be a warrior. But I just see NIKITA, as the fight goes on, breaking him down, landing more and more big shots. And I can see if NIKITA fights the fight that we think he can fight, and that is that long-range type of style and fight plan, that I think he cuts Dylan Biggs up and stops him in 7, 8, or maybe 9 rounds. Let's say, we'll call it in between. Let's say NIKITA by an 8th round stoppage. Now, that's taking nothing away from Dylan Biggs. I think he's a very, very good young guy, and there'll be plenty of time for him to come back. But I just think there is no coincidence that Team ZYU 2 or 3, whatever you want to call it here, has chosen Dylan Biggs as the right fight at this stage of NIKITA career, to get a belt under his belt and get a pretty good scalp, because Dylan Biggs is very, very much admired in the boxing world here in Australia. Not very well known to the average punter out there, but he's got a lot of respect within the boxing world. And I think this will be the fight that people say, NIKITA, this kid is going to go on to anything. And I think we saw that a little bit with brother Tim when he stepped up to fight Joel Camilleri, and then Jack Brubaker and Dwight Ritchie, and so on and so on and so on. It just snowballed from there. So I'm not to say NIKITA is going to go that quickly, but I just think this will be the fight where we see the awesome ability that NIKITA has and the awesome potential that he has. And I think Dylan Biggs is the ideal opponent. And the reason I say he's the ideal opponent is because, like I said before, even though he is taller, he's going to come forward. He's going to walk on NIKITA's shots, and I think he's not. Even though he's a crisp puncher, he doesn't really throw a hell of a lot of punches. He does double up pretty well, I will say. But I just think that NIKITA, his overall style and just natural ability, I think you're going to see him expose Dylan Biggs to some extent here, of being a 21-year-old kid, basically, an inexperienced young kid. I know he's had 10 fights, but I just think you're going to see NIKITA show where the two levels of the guys are at the moment. And I just think NIKITA is going this way, and Dylan Biggs is sort of going to be treading water here. But regardless of what happens, I think Dylan Biggs will come back as a better fighter. I think he'll recoup and hopefully go into some bigger and better things. But I just don't think now is the time. And what I will say to both guys before we finish up is total respect to both of these guys for putting it all on the line. You got Dylan Biggs, 21 years old. He wants to fight the best. He's dedicated his whole life to this so far. He is the Australian champion. And I really applaud him for taking the challenge of NIKITA and putting that belt up for grabs. But I also applaud NIKITA for taking this really, really dangerous fight at this stage of his career. Make no mistake, the trajectory they've got for him, is probably 5, 6, 7, 8 fights down the track. So this is a potential little speed bump. So I applaud Team ZYU 2, 3, whatever you want to call it, for taking such a dangerous challenge at this stage, especially coming off the Brubaker fight, which was a really bruising war for NIKITA. You could quite forgive them for going back a couple of notches and maybe getting a couple of easy kills and then stepping back up to Biggs. But they've taken his fight now, shows they've got a lot of faith in him, and I think it's going to be a great fight. And who knows what might happen. As I said at the start, these two, they come out throwing bombs, those chins are up in the air, and neither one wants to take a backward step. They get caught up in the hype and the crowd and everything else. Who knows what might happen. But I'm going to say common sense prevails after a big first round. The dust settles, TSZYU settles and wins the fight decisively by an 8th round stoppage to take his first belt, being the Australian super welterweight title, and who knows what might come of that. But I'm really looking forward to the fight, the undercard especially as well. Hardman Coleman will be good, but No Limit. Congratulations on them so far. Well, they haven't obviously fought yet, so we'll see what the final result is. But I'm picking that's going to be a great night of boxing and a great main event, and one that we might be talking about for quite some time. So if you're watching the fight, I hope you have a great night. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and more importantly, afterwards when I do the review of it, be happy to hear your thoughts and opinions as well. So enjoy the night, and we'll see you next time.